Hi everybody, I'm Warren. Welcome back to this intro to SQL. What we're going to look at in this video is the ability to be able to look at multiple columns and filter by multiple columns. And how we can do that, we can use either the AND or the OR clause. So what the AND does, we will say that we want to filter data that needs to meet this criteria and this criteria. That means both have to be present and true. So it will return only if both arguments are there. Or means I want to return this data that has either this or that. So it can have either one. So AND means it needs to have both, and OR means it can have one or the other. So don't get confused between these two. And you need both to be true, and or it can be either one. So let's have an example on how that'll work. So what we'll do, we'll go and look at our employee table. So let's go select star from employee. Okay, so we have John Doe and Jane Doe. So we've got two people with the surname Doe in our table, right? So if we had to go and say, select everything from employee, and we're going to put our where clause in because we're filtering data, where the first name, remember we can do multiple filters. If you get this IntelliSense popping up, you can just push tab and it'll complete it for you. Where first name is equal to John. Let's try and last name is equal to Doe. So what we're saying is we're going to go look at this table, we're going to filter it where first name is John and last name has to be Doe. It has to have both of these to return a result. So if we execute that, it pulls, it looks at the data, there's only one record that has John in this column and Doe in this column, and it has to have both. That is what AND means. Both have to return true and they both have to be there. If we change this to OR, so we're saying, go get everything from the employee table where the first name is John. In the first name column, John will return, or in the last name column, Doe must return. It can have either one of these. And if we execute that, it now returns both. What it's doing, it's looking at this record, it's saying, okay, we have John, and there's Doe, so that's cool. It either has John or Doe, so this record 1 can be returned. Then we go down to record 2, we go along, we say, all right, well, first name's Jane, it's not John, but the second column that we're looking at, last name is Doe, and it only needs to have one or the other or both to return. That's what OR does. Either one of these columns can be true, it'll return. If it's AND, both must be true. Have a look at that there. It's going down and saying it has to be John and it has to have Doe, and there's only one scenario where that happens, so it returns one record. So I will grab a few examples here to show you how that works. So let me go and grab here. Just to save a bit of time in this video, I will just copy this and I'll paste it at the bottom here. So here we have a few different queries. If we run this one here, you can see it returns 12 rows. So what we're saying here, select everything from the sales transaction table where the employee ID is greater than 3 or the quantity is greater than 2. So let's have a look and see here. We have the employee ID is only 4 and 5. It's greater than 3. And the quantity here is greater than 2. Wait a sec, there's one that's 1. So we're saying either that or that. So it must either be greater than that, or it can be a quantity of greater than 2 and a unit price of 50. So this is rounded up. It's actually viewing that as 50. But here you can see everything here is 50 and above. So that returns 12 rows. Now what we can do, we can go and say, we can put brackets in. Again, we can define what in this query is carried out first. So we might say first, look at this, get a result, and then say greater than 5. Greater than 50, sorry. So if we run that one, it's exactly the same query written out. All we've done is we've put brackets over this section. So we've said, do the brackets first. We're looking at only employees that have an ID greater than 3 and quantity greater than 2. So those we're looking at first, either or. So it doesn't have to match both. It must be either the one or the other, and then take a unit price greater than 50. So there you can see it reduces the records to 9. Now what we can do, we can group it a different way. We can say where the employee ID is greater than 3, or it has both of these matching, a quantity greater than 2 and a price greater than 50. So this can get quite complicated. You just logically need to understand what you're asking before you do the query, and you can play around and look at the results. But here we're saying the employee ID has to be greater than 3. So that has to be done. So here you can see it's greater than 3. Then we're saying the quantity greater than 2 and unit price greater than 50. So there we can see that it's returning 9 rows. Here it is including ones. This must be a rounding in the data, that it's showing a 1 here, but it actually is 2. But here you can see these two return 9 rows, and that returns 12 rows. So you need to be quite careful on how these items are written and how the brackets around them are managed, because the AND is normally carried out first, and then the OR is carried out, except when you define brackets in your statement. Then it'll do the brackets first. So that can be a little bit tricky. But again, the best bet is filter your data to a small data set, play around with these different statements, and you'll get the hang of it. The more data you're looking at, the more confusing it'll be. So maybe limit it to like 10 records or 20 records, and then, look at the logic from there. Okay. That is covering the where clause and the and the or. So just to bear in mind, and both have to be true, or it can match either column. And you can have multiples. You can have them as many as you want. And remember that and is carried out first. If you want the or to be carried out first, you need to use brackets. So that sums up this video. In the next video, we're going to look at a very quick function called concat, and that's to concatenate different columns. It's a very common thing when you're looking at data. So I'll touch on that in the next video. Thank you very much.